Hey, and did you know I'm currently accepting new patients in New York, offering both in person and telehealth visits? And I also provide telehealth for patients in Michigan, with North Carolina coming soon. And I also offer coaching, both intimacy coaching and menopause coaching, nationally and internationally. So look us up on www.femvhealth.com. I am an American board certified OBGYN, a mom, a Muslim, and I'm talking about sex. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast. Welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sadaf, and this episode is everything you need to know about obesity and hormones and midlife and metabolic syndrome and all that great stuff. Before I get into the first thing I want to make very clear is I am not giving any type of religious or medical advice. So if you have any questions about your health, make sure you go speak with your healthcare provider. And as always, if you have any questions about your religion, make sure you go speak with your friendly neighborhood religious leader. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast because I just happen to be a Muslim woman that talks about sex. All right, so today we have with us Dr. Catherine Toomer. I'm so excited to have with me Dr. Toomer. Dr. Toomer has been on, and actually, Alan was looking up. Catherine, did you know you were on the podcast almost 2 years exactly today?
Wow, really?
I know, who knew?
Yeah,
Apparently we didn't know.
time
But
flies.
yes. So it's been great. So Dr. Toomer, if you could please introduce yourself to all the people that are listening and viewing this podcast that may not know you.
All right. My name is Dr. Catherine Toomer. I'm a family medicine and community health physician, and I'm the founder of Total Weight Care Institute, where I help people with complete and compassionate weight care, and I teach their physicians how to provide complete and compassionate weight care in a space that is often wrought with shame and blame.
And so tell me, what led you to specialize in obesity medicine and weight management?
Well, I'm not an obesity specialist. I do remove that. And the reason is
Oh,
that I
okay.
am a metabolic weight management specialist. And the reason why I make that distinction is because I help a lot of people who are not obese lose weight. And
Hmm.
sometimes that weight's in pounds, and sometimes that weight is in what's weighing them down in life. And so, especially, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, especially when it comes to women in menopause, many women in menopause who need help with metabolic weight loss are not obese. And so, I generally don't want to focus on being an obesity physician because that's actually not true.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that then. So you talk about helping people with their weight management. So tell me a little bit about that, about their metabolic health.
All right. So weight gain and loss is a metabolic process. It's a neuroendocrine process. And so we tend to focus on that because, whenever, anytime you fix something, you need to go to the cause. And the cause of weight gain and weight loss is neuroendocrine. So that's metabolic. And so I focus on that. When fixing someone's metabolic status, weight changes as a side effect. And so that's why I focus on the cause, not the symptom.
How would you say that sexual function, arousal, libido, and hormones are affected by weight, or is it the opposite?
Well, they are affected by weight, mainly because, like all things in medicine, there's a biopsychosocial cause and a biopsychosocial result. And so when it comes to weight, it is related to hormones. It's a neuroendocrine process. And so is menopause, so is libido, so is all the rest. So when they're interconnected in a way so that if you have hormonal changes from menopause, you have unopposed cortisol. Unopposed cortisol leads to insulin resistance, which leads to glucose dysregulation, which leads to weight gain. Weight gain in and of itself can cause estrogen issues. It can also cause psychosocial issues. And as women, we are very visual. We are often judged socially by how we look. And so the psychosocial impact of weight gain is highly significant, particularly when it comes to interest in sex. Sex is partially hormone, but a lot of it's psychological. And so if we're not feeling good about ourselves and how we look particularly without our clothes on, it's immediately going to affect our interest in sex. And
Absolutely.
so
Yes.
that
Yeah.
all plays it, you cannot separate them. They're all connected.
Yeah, no, body image is huge for women. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So, what are some misconceptions you think about weight loss that you wish would just disappear?
Biggest misconception is that it is based on power and discipline and how much you eat and how little you exercise. That's what we've all been told. Exercise more, eat less. Actually, eating less causes it is counterproductive because usually it affects our metabolism and it actually causes our body to hold on to calories and make fat of those calories. If you are someone who has insulin resistance, who has glucose dysregulation for any reason, either because of prior pregnancy that met your genetics, or menopause, or polycystic ovary syndrome, or what now is called, was it multi-endocrine ovarian syndrome, um, or metabolic ovarian syndrome, which is actually a more accurate name. Um, or if you're on steroids, or if you're in chronic stress and high cortisol state, all of those things um, affect weight gain, affect fat production, affect our body's ability and willingness to hold on to fat. And that is such a huge misconception that it's because of our behaviors. And we all know those people who can eat a whole pizza every single day of their lives and they never gain a pound.
Yeah, yeah,
And every time meet those people, the first thing we say is, "Oh my gosh, they have such good genes."
yeah,
Well, if you have genes on this side of the spectrum, you've got genes on the other side of the spectrum, which are like someone like me who eats very, very little, and my body's constantly trying to make fat out of it. And that happens to a lot of people. And usually it's neuroendocrine, but we've been told that it's behavioral.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And, also, you're talking about genes. I mean, South Asians, so many South Asians have insulin resistance, and it has to do with our genetics, just about.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if you look back into it, it has to do with colonization and it has to do with mass starvation in South Asia and how our bodies adapted to that and the change in our genetics. And now, we just have a higher risk of diabetes and heart disease and all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And that's in the African American community, those people who survived the Middle Passage were the ones who were able to take a few calories and hold on to them. And so that genetics served everyone very, very well when they were underfed. But now that we're in a society where we have ready access to food, even if it's not always the healthiest, our body still does that.
exactly, exactly. So, why do so many women notice weight gain during perimenopause and menopause?
So what happens is that, and I kind of do this visually. We got menopause, estrogen and progesterone here. We've got cortisol here. Cortisol is our stress hormone. And our progesterone and our estrogen keeps it in check. It just kind of keeps it so that it doesn't cause us any problem. And the reason that is, it's for societal survival. Women uphold a lot of the stress of society. We need those hormones to keep us functioning. As that hormone drops, estrogen and progesterone drops, cortisol doesn't. And suddenly it becomes the driver. What cortisol does is it raises our insulin levels. It causes insulin resistance. Basically, what insulin resistance is our cell's inability to use insulin to get glucose, the breakdown of food, into our cells. Well, when insulin doesn't work properly, our body reacts by making more and more of it because it thinks, oh, well, it's because we don't have enough. Well, high insulin causes fat production. So as soon as that cortisol is left unopposed, insulin goes way up and fat starts to build, and it's always through the middle. You can tell if something is metabolic or cortisol related because of where the weight is deposited.
Mm, yeah. So, what role does hormone therapy play in weight management, do you think, during menopause?
Hormone replacement will stop the process, it will not reverse it.
Mm-hmm.
So what it does is it makes it so that cortisol is no longer the driver, back our protection against cortisol. However, once that fat is laid down, once that metabolic dysregulation happens, um, taking hormone replacement or estrogen and progesterone will not revert. There has to be another process for that.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's a great segue into medications that may help. So let's talk a little bit about GLP-1 medications. I know that's kind of your specialty and you talk a lot about that. So how have they transformed weight management in patients?
Hugely. I've been using GLP-1s for weight management for 15 years, long before anybody even knew that it could be used for weight management. When it comes to metabolic weight gain, there are other ways of reducing the fat that's produced for some people, not everybody. So muscle is our metabolic powerhouse. The more we build muscle, the more our metabolic status is corrected. The more protein we eat, the more our metabolic status is corrected. The more we get our cortisol levels, our stress levels under control, our metabolic status is corrected. The more that we manage our sleep, our water, our time, also helps our metabolic status. But when it comes to medication, hormone replacement is one because it stops it from getting worse. But low dose GLP-1, regardless of BMI, I want to make that clear. You can use GLP-1s in a way that it does not affect weight loss, it just affects fat loss. And so using a low dose GLP-1 monitoring very closely and will help reverse that weight gain, reverse that fat gain. And it's not for aesthetics reasons. And I just want to make that very, very clear. This is not, even though people do come to me because they don't like that weight gain, it's not the weight gain in and of itself. It's what it represents. It represents a process that is now putting a woman at risk for dementia, for heart disease. And so that's why doing something about it is so important. And
Mm.
so GLP-1s at a low dose, even if for no other reason, is just because of dementia protection and cardiovascular protection, which we know it does. This isn't something we're guessing. We know that GLP-1s help protect from those things. And when we tie it to BMI, we suddenly leave a huge population of people out of that benefit.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit because when you talk to some other practitioners, they will say, or for example, when you talk to them and you say, GLP-1s are great at cutting down inflammation, and they say, what are you talking about? No, I don't think so. So talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to me how a low dose GLP-1 will decrease your cardiovascular risk and your
Mm-hmm.
dementia risk.
Okay. Well, before I go into that, I just want to say that a lot of what physicians think are opinions and not fact. They're not based on science, it's based on their opinion and what they were told by someone else who had that same opinion. And so a lot of what we know this from women's health, and we know this because of the disparities of all sorts in medicine. So, a doctor saying they don't think so is 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 not doesn't hold
Scientific?
much weight, no pun intended. But
Yeah.
anyway, so the way it reduces inflammation is because it controls sugar. Sugar causes inflammation. We know this. This is a scientific fact. We know this already. So when you have a medication that helps regulate blood sugar, it automatically helps with inflammation. But the other is cortisol, especially with women who are in menopause or who are in high stress situation. We know that cortisol affects inflammatory markers. And so anything that helps mitigate the effects of cortisol in the body is going to mitigate the side effects of having high cortisol. So that includes fat production, we know this, inflammation, aging. Cortisol also causes aging. It makes our cells age at a higher rate because they can't repair themselves because cortisol inhibits the enzyme that helps our cells repair, particularly our DNA within those cells. So anything that helps stop the effects of cortisol on our body And GLP-1s are one of those things that does that. And so that also means cancer.
Mm.
You know, all the things that our body does that can lead to cancer production, DNA being unable to correct itself, fat. We already know that obesity lends itself, or even fat markers lend themselves to higher rates of cancer. And so anything that causes any of those things, and GLP-1s help prevent them. And it's all being studied now. And now actually there are reports that GLP-1s help women who had breast cancer who had been on a GLP-1 had better survival rates.
Mm. So interesting. And so, what do you think the mechanism for that is? Is that the decrease in inflammation? Is that the,
We're still studying. There's so many.
yeah.
We know that diabetics who are on GLP-1, we've been using ones for 20 years for diabetics. We just know that the survival rates of diabetics on GLP-1s is much, much higher than those who weren't.
Mhm.
We know that the cancer rates in diabetics who are on GLP-1s is less. The arthritis development was less. There was just so many, we already have the data. The problem we're running into is that as soon as we started tying it to weight management, all the weight biases started coming in. And everyone started assigning those biases to the medication and then using the maladaptive behaviors around diet culture to the medication. When we used it for diabetes, nobody cared.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me a little bit about how it helps with heart disease. I mean, we know that Ozempic really helps, right?
Yeah, they all do.
They all do.
Um, the reason they help with heart disease is because, again, they act in the liver to help regulate our metabolic status. Our liver is what produces our cholesterol, triglycerides, and all the rest. So when we're dysregulated, then all of those things go haywire, and our lipid panel, our lipid profile also gets disrupted. And so
Mm,
by regulating blood sugar, because so what happens with when we eat, our food is broken down and then either used or stored. And so when it's used, that's fine if it can be used. But if it can't be used, it gets stored in muscle, fat, or liver, and fat cells around the body or liver. And so our liver being the center around our lipid profile gets disrupted when our blood sugars are high. So GLP-1s will help reduce uh, cholesterol overall, but it also really affects our triglycerides.
right, because our triglycerides are affected by sugar.
Mm-hmm.
What should patients know before they start like a GLP-1 medication? I mean, obviously they need to be followed by a clinician. Do you have them do like in-body scans and all of that to make sure they're losing, visceral fat and not skeletal muscle?
Mm-hmm. Well, I work virtually, so it's very difficult for me to do that. But there are now home scales. They're actually home scales that I can monitor from, um, monitor also remotely. But essentially, what I do is tell people that this is a tool, not the tool. And they can help that tool by managing other pillars of metabolic management. And so, one of the things I always recommend is make sure you're eating enough protein so your body doesn't go after muscle for it. And the other is make sure that you are doing some type of resistance training so that you can maintain your muscle, not just for this, but to prevent frailty later. Our biggest risk as we get older are hip fractures. Our hip fractures are related to balance, and muscle is what keeps us balanced. And so, not paying attention to muscle is, yeah, you gain the benefit of losing adipose and all the health benefits come with that, but then you add another risk factor by not maintaining muscle. So it's really important before starting to understand that one, you may be on it for the rest of your life at some in some dose or some frequency, and that two, you have to help it along, otherwise creating more of a problem than you're fixing.
Yeah, so I was at this conference and they were talking about how with GLP-1s, the rates of osteoporosis have increased. And, to me, that made sense because as people are doing, having rapid weight loss, then the weight that was helping their bones is no longer there. And so I can see how that would decrease the bone density. What do you think about
Well,
that?
it's not even so much the weight, it's the muscle
Mm,
use.
got it.
So, one of the things that happens, and this is where our years and years of diet culture, the psychosocial impact of our of weight and thinness value in our society is that people focus so much on the weight loss that they forget that there are other aspects of this that are way more important. We've told women you should care about your weight. And then we act surprised when they focus on their weight when it comes to GLP-1 medication. The problem isn't the medication causing osteoporosis. The problem is the medication allowing for weight loss that then stops behaviors that could prevent osteoporosis. Diet,
Yeah.
eating properly in a way to maintain your bones, and then exercising in a way that helps maintain your bones. If you
Sure.
can lose weight without exercising,
Why
then
not exercise?
don't exercise because they're so focused
Right.
on the thinness, not the health aspect
Got
of
it.
what this
Yeah.
is doing.
And that makes a lot of sense, right? So if you start losing a lot more muscle mass, then that's absolutely going to affect your
Hmm.
bones.
And that's nutritional. People keep saying that GLP-1s cause muscle loss. It's not that GLP-1s cause muscle loss, it's that people lean so heavily into the appetite suppression of the medication that they're not eating enough, and therefore they're not maintaining that muscle with protein consumption.
Mm, got it. That makes a lot of sense. So, what's one nutrition recommendation that almost everyone can benefit from?
Eating more protein, eating more fiber, drinking more water.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just doing a podcast with somebody from EBS, and they were talking about how, 70% of our brain is water.
Mm-hmm.
And
Our
so
whole
it's,
body is
yeah,
water. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, so important to make sure that you're drinking
Mm-hmm.
a lot of water to
Yeah.
maintain that and that we lose a lot of water anyways, right, throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think so many diets fail long term?
Because they're diets and they're just not nutrition habits, nutrition plans.
Yeah, yeah.
We should eat intuitively and we should learn to trust our body cues to do that. Trust all the senses we've already been given to do that. We don't have to use external measures in order to get the nutrition that we need. I myself have lost over 110 pounds. I've maintained that weight loss. I've never gained any of my weight back. And that my process started 25 years ago. And the way I do this, and I eat whatever I want. And essentially, and this is what I teach my patients as well, just simply eat 3/4 of your meals as vegetables and protein. If you do that, then no matter what you eat, where you eat, how you eat it, you will be fine. And beautifully, no matter how much you eat, I eat way more now than I did when I was 100 pounds heavier. And mainly because your body takes certain things to make fat. And when you correct that, either with a GLP-1 muscle or all the other tools, then immediately when you eat protein and you eat vegetables, your body does other things with it.
That's so fascinating. So I know you have this really amazing story about how you lost all this weight. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I've mentioned, 25 years ago, I was very much overweight. My genetic makeup is such that anything that triggers my metabolic dysregulation is going to trigger my metabolic dysregulation. So I had years of stress from school, from working, from having children, to then having um, during I became I had gestational diabetes with both of my pregnancies, which essentially is the ultimate of metabolic dysregulation. And so was on insulin and maintained on insulin. Insulin, of course, in and of itself is makes the body make fat. So it fixed your blood sugars, but it also encourages fat production. So the combination was I just kept getting, more and more and more fat in my body. And then a month after my daughter was born, I went into congestive heart failure from pregnancy. And that was a huge wake up call, huge. And so I knew enough about, how the body works, obviously, as a physician, that I knew I had to get my metabolic status under control. The problem I ran into is that no one wanted me to stop insulin because it was controlling A1C. But there's more to metabolic status than your A1C. I had still had way too much fat in my body, and I knew it was wreaking havoc. And I ended up having to create my own program. And my program simply was to manage my carbohydrates by maximizing my proteins. And it worked. And this was before we knew about ketogenic diets, but it worked. And so within the first I just lost 60 pounds, was off insulin, and it just seemed like magic, though it was white knuckling the whole time. And that went on for years until GLP-1s came. I was put on a GLP-1 to help protect my ejection fraction. Actually, my cardiologist put me on a GLP-1. And so, and then immediately my weight dropped. Now, mind you, this was 15 years ago when we hadn't really understood that GLP-1s result in weight loss. So when my weight dropped, I dropped 45 pounds in a few months. It was just drastic. And also I couldn't exercise because I still have congestive heart failure. So my exercise was limited. So it was like, what is this weight loss? So I went through a cancer workup because I just assumed it's like, how do you lose weight that quickly unless there's cancer involved? And it was fine. And that's really what kind of helped that was what kind of a light bulb moment for me. And then, of course, over the years, then it became clear that yes, GLP-1s do drop adipose in the body. And so that's kind of how my journey went. And once I was on a GLP-1, suddenly my whole world opened up because suddenly, I could eat tomatoes again because I couldn't eat tomatoes before because my blood sugars would shoot straight up. Or suddenly, I could actually enjoy my evenings out with family because I didn't have to sit there and wonder, okay, don't eat this, don't eat that, can't have this, can't have that. You have to manipulate all these things. It just gave me a freedom around food that I just didn't have before. And I then started doing that with my patients. And I was like, so that's why I used my program I created and removed all the diets that everybody else had been using that just simply don't work because they're too restrictive. They regiment a process that should be normal, intuitive, that should be fun, that should be enjoyed. We socialize around food, we celebrate around food, and we shouldn't have anything that impedes that.
Yeah, I love that. So, how important is strength training, especially for midlife women? I think you mentioned a little bit about that. And, we talked a little bit about osteoporosis and muscle being so important in terms of maintaining our metabolic health, right? So, let's talk a little bit more about that.
It is the most important activity that a woman can do, that anyone can do. Anyone who has elderly parents, anyone who has elderly patients, anyone who has taken care of anyone who has fallen. One of the first questions we ask our patients, have you fallen recently? All of it, it's the most important thing. It prevents frailty. In our quest often, and because I'm in weight management, so I will talk about thinness quite a bit, but in our quest to be thin, we trade off our health often. And one of those things is that our muscle get affected and then our bones get affected and then we end up frail. And right now it may not seem like a big deal, but it will be a big deal for the person who has to take care of you later. So whatever muscle we build now prevents someone else's muscle from having to take care of us later.
I love
And
that.
whatever muscle we don't build now means we have to rely on someone else's muscles later. And that's usually your children or someone they have to pay to take care of you.
Right, right, 100%. And I have, I'm seeing that right now with somebody that I have in my family that is currently
Mhm.
very frail, and it's very, very difficult. So if someone feels overwhelmed and doesn't know where to start, what are the first steps you would recommend when it comes to, let's say, strength training?
Um, really, YouTube helps. Beginning straight strength training. Wonderful examples of, you know, chair activities, floor activities, activities with no equipment needed, no gym required. And so squats, planks, push-ups, learn how to do them properly, learn the right mechanism, which you can do on YouTube, they show you, and then start there. Pilates is a wonderful exercise. It's very gentle, it's age adjusted, it's size adjusted, it's activity fitness level adjusted, and it drops cortisol because there's yoga involved and breathing involved that helps drop cortisol. And so Pilates, it really is the best exercise I have found. I've seen in my patients and in myself. And there's lots of ways of doing that outside of the more expensive um, reformer clubs that you have to join, that you can do them from home as well. And so that is a good place to start. And just to start, everything's difficult when you start it.
Yeah.
I mean, learning how to walk as a baby is difficult when you start it. And now we run. I mean, you just have to start and then allow yourself to get better at it over time, be patient, and give yourself grace.
Yeah. What about those, let's say those physicians that say that, get rid of those small weights? Because in Pilates, you're doing a lot of those small weights, right? And you're doing high repetition. What about those physicians that say, nope, get rid of those, do those, heavier weights, do those 15-pound weights, 20-pound weights? What do you say to that?
Um, I say get out of the hype and get into the science. Physicians who say that again are functioning on opinion, are functioning usually on cherry picking information that supports their opinion.
Yeah.
For someone like me, for example, I have congestive heart failure. I cannot pick up heavy weights. I should not ever pick up heavy weights. Yet I am, you know, quite healthy and quite fit, I think.
Yeah.
Um, Not everybody has to be an Olympian. Not everybody has to be, a bodybuilder. Not everybody, they just have to have enough strength to function in their lives in a way so that their body does what they need it to do and that it prevents them from having problems later in their life. Muscle builds on itself. So you don't have to do a lot at once. You can just do a little bit at a time for a long time and you get the same results. Because the thing is, this is my rule, and this is what I always tell my patients, and I rule I follow myself. Whatever you do now, you have to be able to do when you're 90. Otherwise, whatever you can't do is going to fall away, and whatever benefit you got from that is going to fall away with it. So at 90, I'm not going to be able to lift 20-pound weights. I don't want to be able to lift 20-pound weights, but I can surely lift 5-pound weights and continue to do 5-pound weights. And if it means doing more sets or more reps of something using those 5-pound weights, and when I'm 90, I may have to cut back on the reps or cut back on the sets, but I'll still be able to lift those 5-pound weights. In fact, I know this for a fact because my mother's 96 and
Amazing.
does her exercises using 1 and 2-pound weights.
It's fantastic. So, what do you think is the biggest mistake people do when they're trying to lose weight?
Cut back on calories.
Yeah.
It's not how much you eat, it's the composition of what you eat that matters. People will, you can eat 100 calories of Doritos and eat 100 calories of chicken, and your body does two totally different things with it. It's better to focus on the content, not the calories, and not the volume. And also, not to compare with other people, because you can take 10 people, they can all eat the exact same meal, and your body will do 10 different things with it. And so you basically function based on how your own body works. And the only way you're going to know that is if you pay attention to how you feel, how your body reacts to different foods, to different activities. And again, now it changes over time. What you're doing now, I'm 60 years old. What I do now is very different from what I did 30 years ago, or what I'll do 30 years from now. In fact, 30 years ago, I was probably in the worst shape of my life and couldn't walk a mile.
Yeah.
And so, you can't base it on where you are now. Just know the consistency is more important also than the intensity of what's done.
Hmm. I like that. So, what do you think is the most underrated health habit?
Most underrated health habit is drinking water, getting enough sleep, and but particularly lowering stress. No one focuses on their stress. Their stress level will override every single other process. It will disrupt your sleep because your cortisol levels will spike at 3 o'clock in the morning and wake you up if your cortisol levels are high. So if you're under a lot of stress, cortisol levels are high, you try to go to sleep, you're going to be awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's going to disrupt your hormones. That's going to make it harder for you to, one, use calories appropriately in your body, for your body to use calories appropriately. It's going to mess up your hunger cues because of the hormones from that. And so, and then when you do eat and your cortisol levels are high, your body immediately tries to make fat out of whatever calories you do eat. So ignoring ways of reducing stress and waiting until you feel stress means you've gone way overboard. We're not designed to feel stress. Just assume it's high and work to get it down.
Yeah. So, what does a healthy weight mean to you?
Healthy weight is whatever weight your body is when you're healthy.
I
There
like
is no such thing as a healthy size. There are unhealthy sizes. Yes, we know this. An unhealthy weight is one where you cannot function in the way you like because your weight is causing problems, joint pain, heart disease, whatever. But once those things have improved to the point where you can actually function in the way that you enjoy your life, whatever weight that is a healthy weight.
Yeah, I love that.
And it's not in your, because this is the other reason why I do not like um, setting goal weights. Most, because it assigns a number to a process that has nothing to do with your weight. It has to do with your health, and your body will go where it goes when you just do things in a healthy way. And I'll just give you an example myself. I actually prefer being about 20 pounds heavier. I don't like being thin. I like being curvy. I would prefer to be curvy. But for my A1 to be where it's supposed to be, my curves go away. And as soon as I try to get my curves back, my A1 creeps up. I can't. And so, and so I don't even pay attention to my weight other than for my cardiac status, but that's another story. But and that's what I try to instill in my patients as well. Those who are like, I'm getting too thin. No, you're getting more healthy. Or I'm not losing any more weight, because you don't need to. What do you need to lose weight for? Are you short of breath when you go up and down stairs? No. Are you able to do all the activities of the day that you wanted to do before? Yes. Sleeping well? Yes. Are relationships good? Yes. Good, enjoying your job? Yes. So why does your weight matter? If all the things in your life are working the way you want them to work, and your body is working the way you want them to work, why does that extra pounds matter? Why
Yeah.
does that extra 10 pounds, 15, 20 pounds even?
So, if you could leave our listeners with one message regarding weight health, confidence, and living well, what do you think that would be?
I wish we could separate our weight from our wellness. When we stop focusing on weight and focus on how well we live our lives, our weight stops mattering. It stops, and over time, hopefully in society, that will change. The only way we're going to change making thinness this value, this currency, is if we stop it.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. And I think that it's so difficult, especially for our youth as well, correct? Because there's such an emphasis on being thin, being a certain height, being a certain weight that, most individuals grow up feeling like they're not enough. And that affects people in so many different ways, right? Psychologically and, when they are trying to live their life or in relationships and all of this, right? They have this constant feeling that they're not enough. And so what I would love listeners to know is that you are absolutely enough. You are enough for, yourself, for anyone else, and that it's really, really important to focus on how you feel, right? And are you feeling good? And I love how you place the emphasis on being able to do activities of daily living, right? That's what you're focused on. You're focused on like, are you able to walk up a flight of stairs? Are you able to move around? How is your balance? And you're focused more on that and not so much on the number on the scale, which I think is so, so important.
Especially when given that um, weight, our self-esteem, and our sexual behaviors are tied together.
100%. Yeah.
And so when someone is so focused on their weight, it sets them, and they don't love themselves no matter what their weight is, it really sets them up for abuse in some way
A
or
hundred
another,
percent.
either emotional abuse, physical abuse, being taken advantage of in any way, in relationships. And that's one of the reasons why sabotage is so common in health improvement processes, is because whoever is taking advantage of the person's self-esteem, wherever their self-esteem is, will try to stop that self-esteem improvement process, because suddenly they'll lose that advantage. And that's why, it's not really about weight only. It's about how you feel about yourself. Love yourself at any weight, because no matter, if you don't love yourself at right now, where you are now, it doesn't matter how much weight you lose, you're not going to love yourself either. So if you love yourself now, no matter where you are, you'll love yourself at every single step. And that's going to have the greatest impact on health than anything else.
I love that, Catherine. And you know what? We've never actually touched on that in any of the episodes that I can remember. The fact that people will manipulate you
Mm-hmm.
and get you to feel bad about yourself and take advantage of that, right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
so right. I mean, that's, involved in human trafficking, that's involved in so many things, right? When you don't love yourself, you can allow others to take advantage of that. And we definitely don't want that. So I love how you emphasize, loving yourself at every single weight, because I think that really that's where true love is, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
that you really need to love yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where, and when you love yourself, you're going to try to take care of yourself, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
whatever weight you're at. So I
And
love
then
that.
one day we'll have a conversation on actual steps you can do to do that work,
Yeah, of
as
loving
opposed to just
yourself.
like this, oh, love yourself. You're like, okay, how?
Right. Right.
And I'll leave you with this. The best way to love yourself is to look at yourself, and whatever part of your body that you think you don't like, name it, and let her become your friend. That's one step. It sounds hokey, but it's an affirmation exercise that actually works.
Hmm. So interesting. Well, I'll have to try that myself. So, Catherine, for all those people listening and watching and thinking that, wow, she is amazing. I think she is so phenomenal. I would love to work with her. How can people get in touch with you? How can they follow you? How can they work with you?
The best way to go is to my under construction website, although I still have all the ways to contact me, and that is at drtoomer.com. And that's drtoomer.com. There are links for anyone who has questions or wants to contact me. And then the other is I have a YouTube channel called Dr. Toomer Talks. Every Tuesday I do lives at 6 p.m. Eastern. And so that's another way to come listen to what I do, ask me questions, and I do respond to the comments there as well.
I love that. I didn't even know you had a live YouTube channel. I love
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a great conversation, and I love how really emphasize feeling good about yourself and not just about the scale, the number on the scale, which I think is so, so important. And well, we are done here, and it's been real and really intimate. Remember, this is not meant to be any type of medical advice. So if you have any questions about your weight, your health, any of those things, make sure you go speak with your healthcare provider. And until next time, this is the Muslim Sex Podcast. So thank you for listening to the podcast, and make sure you leave us a review, share and like the podcast. And if you leave me a review, I'd love to shout you out on social media. So be sure that you share it with all your friends. And thanks for listening.